Cocaine Cowboys, the deadly rise of Ireland's drug lords. The live show is on sale now. We're on the road on February 10th at the Lime Tree Theatre in Limerick, February 15th in Cork's Everyman Theatre, and on Sunday 18th, we're back at Dublin's 3 Olympia. April takes us to Galway's Town Hall Theatre, Killarney's INEC, and Belfast's Waterfront Studios. Check mcd.ie or venue for ticket sales. It was a little bit like Lanigan's Ball, the information we were getting about the Balkans mob boss, Edin Gacanin, over the past year or so.
Yeah.
He was arrested in Dubai. He was released. He was back out on the streets. He was arrested again. We just didn't know what was going on. Now it turns out he's cut a deal with the Dutch.
Yeah. He's cut a deal with the Dutch, but it doesn't seem clear if he's going to be extradited to face it, or is it a kind of a nominal sentence?
So yeah, that's what I was going to start off with. Where is he?
Well, I mean, as far as we know, he remains in Dubai. So he's obviously speaking to the Dutch authorities through solicitors from Dubai. In fact, we're speaking about him at all, I suppose, because there was reports emerged this week that he'd been given a 7-year sentence for a range of drug trafficking offences, and also fined €1 million, which is a significant enough amount of money.
To a normal person.
To a normal person. And during that court hearing, he appeared by video link, presumably from Dubai. It was basically a plea deal, which he's accepted and done a deal with Dutch prosecutors through a solicitor there. So it's a funny one, isn't it?
It's a really strange one. So Gacanin obviously is one of the members of the European Super Cartel that we're talking about a lot, headed up by Daniel Kinahan, and the group who met at his wedding in the Burj Al Arab in 2017. And the others that were there would have been Ridwan Taghi in jail in the Netherlands.
Johnny Morrissey.
Having gone through a huge big trial there, still awaiting the end of that, the Marengo.
Well, Johnny Morrissey, and of course Raffaele Imperiale, who's also been in the news recently. He would have been a mafiosa, I suppose, from the southern part of Italy, and he has been extradited and is currently on trial in
What's the gig with the island with him?
But the island is so I don't know if you remember.
I feel like we know these people now.
Well,
Raphael
I do. I'm sure I'm sure they don't feel the same about us. But
they don't know who the hell we are.
So if you remember, and I'm probably going to get bits of this wrong, but in Dubai, sometime around the turn of the century, some developer came up with this idea to build the world map.
Yeah.
And every country would be a little island that would be sold off. And the idea would be that it's in scale as obviously not that big, and that you could buy,
Ireland.
could buy Ireland, for example.
Yeah. Remember writing about it at the time.
Yeah. And it's Dubai actually went through a property crash at the same time as us. And at 2008 to 2010, and the development ceased at that point. So it's kind of never been fully completed.
Did some of it not sink?
But some of it was beginning to sink, or I don't know if it actually sank, but it felt that if you started building villas on it or whatever, it would sink. So I don't think it actually sank, but it kind of half sank. But anyway, Raffaele Imperiale bought Taiwan.
God.
Right now, and they actually had a plan for what it was going to look like. I saw the artist's design, or the architectural design.
So he bought it off the plans.
He bought it off the plans. He bought the property, and the idea was to build, I think it was 6 to 8 of these kind of ultra sort of mansion style villas.
Yeah,
and that's what would be on it. And in theory, I suppose people would rent them out, or he would live there.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of size of it. It featured these sort of 8 sort of super modern villas, but they've never been used. Never been built.
Taiwan, but no, never been built. So
there's only a couple of bits of it. I think the Lebanon
he essentially has the land registry as such of Taiwan.
Yes.
I wonder, did he pick Taiwan, or was it all that was left?
I don't know, but I mean, it's he has handed it, or offered to hand it over to Italian prosecutors, saying it's worth 70 million.
Big deal, handing over something that doesn't exist.
Exactly, and I think that's there's a sense coming back from the prosecutors. It's not worth anything because nothing is ever going to be built there.
It was his bad investment, isn't that typical of a criminal like him? He, of course, liked his little bit of bling.
Yeah.
Raffaele Imperiale, hadn't he? A couple of Van Gogh
He did. Well, acquired by other means.
They
I
were
think.
acquired by other means, but nonetheless, he had them in his Italian mansion. He seems to be a really big spender, really sort of a brash kind of a flash guy who's now, of course, helping the Italian state because he's gone state witness as such. There seems to be the first level of the information he's giving appears to be about the local kind of Camorra.
Yeah, I mean, he's
mafia.
He's been prosecuted by it's the Camorra, and there's factions within that he's associated with one of the factions in particular.
Nobody seems to be clearly able to answer the question of is he likely to give evidence against the likes of Daniel Kinahan and his partners. The last time I think you were speaking with Flor Ulfan as well, and she was saying that he was in a process where he was basically giving up all his sins, and that is what's normal for people going into witness protection and turning state witness. They have to literally tell everything they've ever done in order to get that deal. And that can take months. It can be, we saw Gary Haggerty there, who was in the box in the north recently giving evidence. And there was something like 1,000 statements he gave in relation to what he had done.
Yeah, I mean, Imperiale I think he's looking for 14 years imprisonment. I mean, that's what he is seeking to get. And in exchange, he's, for example, handing over his Taiwan and various other assets that he has. And he's also giving information about how his organization worked in Italy. I mean, obviously, outside of this prosecution that's going on in Italy, that's for offences committed within the Italian state, and that's what they're interested in. Now, as far as I know, and it has been reported in the Dutch media, that as part of his plea deal, that he has also agreed to give evidence in international cases, if so required.
We'll have to queue up for him, I'd say.
By the Italians.
Yeah.
So and then obviously at that point he'd already be serving a sentence. So that's, whatever he has on other people in other parts of Europe are probably not coming to light yet, or not even being demanded maybe at this point. So that's Imperiale. Taji,
we went off on a little bit of a side.
We did,
but I did want to ask about the island. Back to
Gacanin, because there's sort of four corners of the Super Cartel. Taji, who who's spoke about many times, is currently, awaiting a verdict really in his trial. Imperiale the same. Now Gacanin has been dealt with by the courts to a lesser extent. I mean, he was the head of what's called the Dino and Tito cartel, isn't it? It was basically they're Bosnian originally, but Bosnian Dutch nationality. So they were operating across those two countries initially. They've also been in Dubai, something as long as the Kinahans, and they were regarded, the Super Cartel, obviously, of supplying 1/3 of the cocaine in Europe. The Gacanin's cartel had representatives, I think, particularly in Peru, where a number of Bosnians have been arrested, and they seem to have been heavily involved in the transportation of drugs from Peru to Europe in particular. That seems to have been at least a good degree of their speciality. The Kinahans certainly seem to have had the contacts to buy the drugs. But either way, all of these organizations were pooling their resources. Gacanin would have been regarded by, I think he's been formally sanctioned by the US in the same way as the Kinahans have.
That was in March. He was sanctioned by the US Treasury. And
I think they referred to him during that sanctioning as one of the biggest narco traffickers in the world.
One of the world's most
time.
prolific drug traffickers, yeah. And that was the US Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, described him as that. So, with all that going on in the background, with him being identified at the wedding with Daniel Kinahan, with everything, it feels like 7 years jail is very, very little.
It does seem very little, and why plea deals occur and why they don't occur is probably to do with the level of evidence that is available to the state who are prosecuting the cases. So we've seen this in Ireland all the time, where certain charges will be brought against people, maybe a murder charge, and as it comes to court, that person will plead guilty to a lesser charge, for example, conspiracy to be involved in something, and the state make that decision on the basis of what evidence is available to them. The EncroChat evidence has been routinely accepted in Dutch courts for the most part. However, they may feel that they don't have evidence of other crimes to do with violence or whatever. He certainly, there is enough though that Gacanin didn't feel comfortable in fighting the case, obviously.
And you'd sort of, in a way, when you see these guys being sanctioned by the US Treasury, being described as one of the world's most prolific drug dealers, you'd like to think there's other stuff coming for them and that's not it.
Yes, it could.
You know what I mean? Money laundering or directing a criminal organisation. I have some contacts, some other media people who are in various regions who we keep in contact together, and we pass one another little pieces of information that might be of interest to us. A little bit train spotting-y maybe. But yeah, this was up and active yesterday. So Mirza Gacanin, who is
he's the cousin of Edin Gacanin.
Gacanin.
Yeah.
And they seem to have sort of split in a way. They are no longer...
he was certainly part of, like, a key member of that organisation, but he seems to have, Mirza, who's his cousin, seems to have believed that he was going to be killed by Gacanin, and seems to have done interviews and maybe participated in the justice system, I suppose, if you want to call it that.
But he is serving 4 years in prison, and I think he has been actively accused, and certainly the organisation, shall we say, has been accused of being very friendly with certain political leaders in Bosnia-Herzegovina.
Yeah, I mean, if you can read it, you can read in the papers in Bosnia. Gacanin has he obviously spent a large time of his life in Holland, but he was returning. Once he went to Dubai, he doesn't seem to have come back to the Netherlands at all, but he does seem to have returned periodically to Bosnia. Mm-hmm. And when he would land in Bosnia, rather than, maybe facing police attention, he was being collected by Secret Service, army people, escorted, given security the whole time throughout. Yeah. There's allegations of connections with very high up political figures. Bosnia, of course, had been a troubled part of the world everybody will know about. And certainly the suggestion is, as one of the biggest drug traffickers in the world, he became fabulously wealthy, and that there was certainly allegations of corruption surrounding him there. We have pictures of him, of course, in Dubai, Gacanin, and you can see him. He was like Daniel Kinahan. He seems to have been a fan of the fighting scene. He seems to have spent a lot of time with being trained with UFC fighters, all the time going around with very heavy bodyguards.
Meatheads.
Military meatheads types, Nicola, might even be. You
love that word, don't
I
you?
do. Yeah. I like an L meathead. So that's he.
And funny enough, it's the bodyguards that, certainly journalists have been able to have sort of drawn the connections between the political classes and the criminal underworld through the sort of the bodyguards and the security personnel and who they've been photographed with. And there's been a minister actually photographed with one of his bodyguards. And so there's a very sort of complicated, murky mixing of politics, power, and cocaine.
Yeah, well, of course, if you're talking about people that are that fabulously wealthy, and you have a country where there is a degree of instability and poverty, money can be a very corrupting influence. There's no doubt about that. So what happens next? It's not clear. I mean, the fact that he appeared by video link to the court is unusual. I don't know if that means then he consents to extradition.
Because our understanding is he's not even in custody in Dubai. He was arrested in 2022 and very quickly was let go.
Yeah, he was allowed out on bail.
On a kind of a sort of, in a way he's possibly not allowed to leave Dubai.
Yeah.
So again, fabulously wealthy people.
Yeah, it seems to be. And of course, I don't know. We don't know what the judicial system in Dubai is like. Could he say, I'll serve my sentence in a prison in Dubai? or does he have to be brought back? But certainly he's consenting to this process, and this is a plea deal done. There does seem to be not a huge amount of information. No doubt more will come out.
Yeah.
But I suppose if you do look at it on another way, you have there's only one wing of that super cartel that hasn't now come before the courts and is now not facing a prison sentence for sure. And that's the Kinahan wing of it. And maybe their day will be coming. But it's
Isn't it extraordinary how everything sort of, you have this massive big world out there, and, you talk about them in various regions and the cocaine moving, and, you picture the globe and how big the world is, yet they have managed to sort of get their tentacles into quite strange parts of it. But everything comes back to Amsterdam, to the Netherlands.
Yeah.
That's where it's all goes back to, where all these guys appear to have, first of all, made their deals, planned out their future.
Yeah, they're kind of like
they got their life coaching there,
Yeah, they're kind of like tech bros, aren't they, though?
Yeah.
Like where they all, Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, and they're all of a certain age, a certain background, they all came from, they all ended up in California. And it's something equivalent, I suppose, happened in the cocaine world to guys in their 20s who like the tech bros, shot to prominence at a similar time. But their day is passing.
And the other thing, just before we move on from that, the other thing I think that links them that's very clear is they all are leaders of these groupings that are very tight familial groupings.
Yeah.
And that's what's made them so powerful, because it's very difficult to break through from a law enforcement point of view. Family gangs, you're trying to get through blood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Very difficult to turn insiders, to get informers, to get people out of the organisation, or to break into it, indeed, when you're not part of that grouping. They all, each and every one of them, including the Kinahan organisation, are a sort of a tight band of brothers.
Yeah, they've relied on a small group of people. But you can see as well, the Kinahans, certainly there's been other articles written this week in other European publications, and you can see while they were all heavily involved in the drug aspect of it, you can see the Kinahan organisation became more deeply embedded in the management of the money, I think, than the others, the movement of that money. And I think they were offering those services.
Yeah.
And in a funny way, that gave them links into civil society, maybe that Taji, for example, didn't fully have. And maybe that's given them a degree of protection in Dubai, where money really does grease a lot of wheels. Whether it gives them the ultimate protection that they'll avoid prosecution in Ireland, it has to be doubted that it will. But I think that has made it slightly more complicated, in that the Kinahans at least had ties within this state to people within that world, and also in ties to business. In a way, I don't think that the others did so much.
It's interesting, when you look back to 2010, to Operation Shovel in May of 2010, largely based, it was a multi-agency takedown, it was called, of the Kinahan organisation. Most of the activity happened around the Costa del Sol. And at that point, the uniqueness of the organisation was that they were a one-stop shop, they called them. They were a drug dealing outfit, but you could also put your money back in and they'd wash it for you.
Yeah.
And that was really what was the kind of the big takeaway from that. But Europol, you'd wonder, it was younger then, obviously, as a group of cooperating police forces. There was definitely a lot of problems with that Operation Shovel. It backfired completely. It empowered the Kinahans to become bigger and better. But they knew something about them. But I wonder, did they know exactly how big they were becoming at that point? Did they not really know what they were going for? Did they not really realise how vast the organisation had become? And obviously the man at the top of it then, Christy Kinahan Sr., the type of mind they were dealing with there.
I think they were very regionally focused. I think the Spanish police were, obviously, and for obvious reasons, they were focused on what was happening in Spain. But these organisations became, and they are obviously formally declared, transnational crime groups. And I think the criminals themselves were thinking, no borders, to use a phrase that's become popular. They were thinking across the borders, and it's only in recent times that you've seen these police forces, while they would have cooperated even back in 2010, but the idea of prosecuting across borders, I think, maybe they had a while to catch up with the criminal organisations who just were simply thinking in bigger terms.
I think they did, and I think they also took a long time to realise that they had to trust one another.
Yeah.
I think it's changed now. I think the Kinahans have changed that, actually, to be honest with you. They've changed the way police go about their business in Europe. But they would have been, there still would have been that mistrust there, and were they really giving each other there was always kind of suspicion that the Kinahans had police in their pocket, which indeed they did in Spain, in Belgium, and anywhere they went. Not the force. I don't mean the police forces, but they had individual police in their pockets.
Officers,
Yeah. And I think, there was this level of mistrust that maybe the proper information wasn't passed to one jurisdiction to the other. But definitely also, I reckon, in time we can look back on it, and maybe Europol didn't know what they were dealing with.
No, I don't think they did. I think the EncroChat hack has probably really revealed what wasn't known, and it's certainly that snapshot into the criminal underworld, I think, has been, and they've said it themselves, has been a surprise for how the extent of it, and also its ties into all sorts of worlds. I think that probably was an eye-opening moment for the police forces across Europe.
Finally, ask you: are you having sleepless nights yet?
Why about the gigs?
About the gigs, yeah.
No, because it's if it all goes wrong, it'll be you. It'll be you.
Well, I'll just tell you this much: I have polished my first half for Cocaine Cowboys.
Yeah,
I have it polished, and I am now no longer having sleepless nights about it, because it's all been drawn up and we know what we're doing, and myself and Ian are talking about all sorts of audio and visual stuff we're going to do with it. But you and I, I think,
but I mean, traditionally, like the last time we did the gigs, I wanted to, let's go through this line by line and do this, and you wouldn't do it, and that's how I get nervous. No, just let it happen and it'll be grand. And then I said, no, Nicola, will we not go through what we're going to say? And you said no. I asked Ian, who's our producer, and he said, you're going to be grand. Yeah. And that was enough for you.
But I still think that
I should do a bit more work.
You need to put your head in the game with it now a little bit. My head's in it, you see.
Okay, yeah.
I think, So have I worried you enough now? Giving you a little bit of the...
No, but there's a bit of me, the oppositional part of me thinks I'm definitely not going to do anything now because I've been called out on air.
On air. You're always called out on air. But you know what'll happen, you see, in a blink of an eye, and every time I look at my phone, there I go again, I get a shock to see what date it is, because December seems to be just flying, as it always does.
It does.
And, you get through the week ahead that we're on, and you're really into the homeward straight. And then we're into January, and then you have a few weeks to go, and you're going to be sitting up on that stage grinning. And I don't think your shoes are going to...
We're going to carry it this
time.
Okay. I'll take the...
It's just a little...
It's
like, with one of the kids when they need to study.
Yeah.
I'm just
trying.
Giving you a little bit of a...
You work for your parenting.
Scare at bedtime.
A fear-based parenting, is it?
That's always been my way.
Yeah.
So I'll be at home tonight, and I'll be reading that smart arse text you sent me about how do planes fly.
Yeah, well,
so there won't be any more of those questions.
No, I will definitely be further researching.
Okay, right. Anyway, we will...
Thanks, Mammy.
Yeah, you're welcome. Bye. I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.